6 o'clock, I will call the ad hoc committee for the Ripon Area Fire District to order. I'll do a roll call. Krieger?
Here.
Vandenbrink?
Here.
Godsky here. And we will acknowledge that we have council from the different municipalities on hand. And we'll take a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I so moved.
I'll second.
You better. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Be busy tonight.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Public comment. Sean, did you have anything in public comment you want to say?
No, I just wanted to be here in case you had accounting questions or
No worries.
things like that.
Okay. All right. We'll move right into it. Question, just to make sure I didn't miss something. Your comments that you were laying out before, we had your email with some of your thoughts, but when you were explaining stuff, that was more than what was in the email. Did that go out to Ellen at all? Okay, just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing.
Nope, just comments and context during the meeting as we discussed it, yep.
Okay, all right. So I'll open it. I don't have a set agenda, like we all know what we're trying to work through tonight. We have all the counselors here, hopefully to help us along. On my end, I think they're equally pressing between, what is the term? Joining and leaving, right? There's an actual term.
Attachment.
Attachment and detachment.
It's a long day, sorry. Attachment and detachment. I think between the two, I think we'll find easier alignment on the attachment section. I think that one's probably, in my opinion, not that it's less of an issue, but we'll have more probably agreement between all of us. So I think the detachment one, in my opinion, would be the one to start, if you guys are good with that. So, and I'll open it there. I mean, we've talked a lot, you know, we haven't talked yet, and Lud, I don't know if you have anything you want to weigh in right away from the city level?
Again, I guess obviously, we start with what we proposed, but that's not the end, and nobody suggested it was. So the idea that they were here at this meeting makes sense. And I obviously didn't hear Tom's comments and don't really know how we got to the idea that this would somehow be a chilling effect on the fire district if we amend these bylaws. We need to do something. Obviously, I think everybody in this room can understand there's a history to the creation of the fire district that goes a ways back. And the evolution from there, I think, is also out there in terms of how we got to today. And the idea that we don't move forward clearly will mean the end of the district. And so the concepts that we're looking at are to make it viable going forward, whether that's keeping everybody that's currently on or perhaps encouraging others to join. I know that the town of Matoman is out there, and I know that they're having issues with where they're at now. So the idea that it is structured as the town of Ripon, this, rural, it was the city, it was the rural, that's where it started. The district was a concept that obviously was put out there. The creation of these bylaws clearly was, let's get something on paper. I don't think anybody said this is the end all, the be all. And coming out of a rural city model is how this got generated. And in the beginning, we had Matoman, correct? Okay, and that's the only one that's left, correct?
Green Lake left.
On Green Lake. We had Green Lake as well in the way beginning.
They were gone before I ever came on.
Okay, yeah, and I want to think, were they part of the original bylaws?
They
I
were.
don't even know. They were?
Yeah, I got a copy from Tudor.
Yeah, the 2010 bylaws are not the original
Right,
bylaws. These
right.
were revamped in 2010. I think from our perspective, and as a committee here of the district, there was not viable action to move forward with the bylaws that were presented and that they were not approved by the district. And so I think the alternative is to form this committee to work on potential revisions to the bylaws. So I don't think anyone would suggest that amending the bylaws creates a chilling effect in and of itself. I think everyone's here because there's reasonable agreement that we should have discussion about the bylaws and whether changes should be made and how so. And so what I would view as a good outcome of this meeting would be, we don't have fully redlined bylaws. We need to discuss and find alignment, find common ground on the issues you mentioned. There's probably other things that could or should be reviewed and updated and modernized and looked at as part of reviewing the bylaws, especially if we're going to go through the process of kind of working through them in this committee structure. So I think coming out of tonight, if this group could achieve some alignment on general structural parameters that we might agree on seeing how that mocks up, and that we leave this meeting with the directive to go ahead and kind of start mocking that up and put something together for the board to consider, or for this committee to consider, that feels like a productive approach coming out of tonight.
Okay,
From our
and
perspective.
I'm not suggesting anything different. I'm just, I guess, throwing the history into the story and coming to the position we sit today and the reality, and there's certainly other things in the bylaws that can be tweaked or updated. I agree with that, 100%. Obviously, the issues that were presented to the city, by the city, to this board were, the heart of it in terms of why would any member, never mind the lion's share member, being 75% or somewhere in that neighborhood, move forward with this structure when it's been a fairly significant period of time since we bought any equipment. We built a building, but we haven't bought equipment for quite some time.
Well, I think to be clear, there's been pretty significant equipment purchases since these bylaws have been in effect for 15 years, and there's been pretty significant.
When's the last time we bought something? I guess, again, I'm not claiming to be an expert in history.
The ladder truck,
How long ago?
approximately 6 years ago.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that was the last purchase. that
And there's
was-
been smaller,
Other apparatus, vehicles,
smaller
ladder truck.
command vehicles,
Yeah.
pickups, that kind of stuff.
Again, the depreciated value of the equipment, does anybody here have a sense of what that is?
The depreciated value
Yeah.
of it? And so, I don't know, by asset line, do we have a list of assets when we purchased and what the value was, the year it was purchased? I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I know that Sean has done some work in that area. And again, I'm only saying this just to point out that this is a major purchase going forward. And maybe there's no disagreement on that. There has to be some means to recoup your investment according to your percentage share. That's probably where to start. I mean, we can go anywhere you want to go with
Yeah,
that.
I think
That's
for
probably the beginning.
for the productive nature of this discussion, I think it would be in our best interest as much as possible to sort of decouple the concept of this fire engine purchase. It's not really related to the charge of this committee. The Fire District Board has separately moved forward with an agenda or with a budget for purposes of the engine purchase. And I think, yeah, we start with an open discussion about these bylaws and where we might see alignment on how to deal with them, attachment and detachment being obvious issues that.
But if we don't, I mean, we can spend all night, I mean, we got 2 hours, I guess, or whatever. But if we don't get at the heart of it is clear. It is, are we going to look at the ability of current members and joining members to be able to identify an interest in the entity, or why do we move forward?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's why we're here. I think that's completely, it can be totally unrelated to the purchase of the fire truck that's also been at discussion recently.
So here,
But it's
I'll
not.
I'll play the guy who doesn't have any of the background,
Yeah.
I don't have any of the background. But it would be helpful for me to understand how we got here. And by that, I mean, I've looked at the paper. I haven't lived through the stuff like many or all of you have. But I've got agreements going back to, this one's from 2004. Proposed fire protection agreement. I don't know if you guys have all this stuff, 2004. I've got a version from 2010. I've got a draft from 2014. I'm not sure, Barry, who put together this draft?
Of the bylaws, man?
Yeah, 2014, or I'm sorry,
2024, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one that was online. I don't know if that was applicable or not, because it wasn't signed, to our knowledge, I don't think.
Yeah, I just, somebody wrote it, and it wouldn't have been the towns.
No.
And I guess the point is, you know, that's 20 years worth of time where the arrangement was consistently, when you leave, you forfeit what you have. I presume, and somebody should correct me if I'm wrong, that the 2024 was put together by the city, because it wasn't put together by the towns.
No, I think it's, I think referencing 2024 bylaws is probably a mistake. I think those are the 2010 bylaws marked up with potential comments and revisions that were
Okay.
never approved, discussed, formalized, signed by anybody. So and those were posted by the city on the city's website.
Yeah.
And when we were made aware of that, we notified the city administrator that those needed to be removed. They don't represent current bylaws
Anything.
or approved bylaws.
Yeah, I guess my point is, why now? Why, I understand that we're buying this fire truck, but that was authorized back in 2022,
Right.
from what I read, and I pulled the minutes from the fire district from October of 2022 approving it, and I also pulled the minutes from the city council meeting immediately after. It would have been November of 2022 or whatever. I have them here, if we need to pull them out, where they reported out that the purchase was made. And so, you know, part of this is what's everybody's goal. The bylaw drafting aside, what's everybody's goal, and
To
why?
make it a viable entity moving forward. That's the
But
goal.
what's I guess the question is, what's different?
What's different is we've had an evolution in the fire district and the running of the fire department. And again, we don't need to sit here and throw stones as to how we got here, okay? And who's responsible for how we got here. The fire department has been mismanaged for a significant period of time. So, you know, we can all look at each other and go, how did that happen? It happened. And you can read it online, you can look it up. in
Is
public
the
record.
suggestion, though, that the bylaws are the base cause for issues that you're
The
referring to?
ineffectiveness of the bylaws in respect to the interest of the various parties is in part why we're here, and where do we go from here is critically important. So yes, this is a day that we have to move forward with. If we fail to move forward with, the thing falls apart.
And you've said it a couple times,
Yeah.
maybe some clarity on what exactly falls apart.
What falls apart is the concept that we're all working and pulling on the same end of the rope, with one party investing the lion's share of the money. I don't care if you call it the city, the town of Ibiebska. The city of Ripon is carrying the lion's share of it.
Well, it's proportional. Let's call it what it is. It's a proportional cost share.
75% is 75%.
Proportional, correct.
I don't even know what the response is.
Well,
It's 75%.
Hold on here, we're butting heads, okay? So,
Why don't you know what we're butting heads about?
you're both right. Well, I mean butting heads in the point where we're not getting anywhere. You're both right.
I don't know why you're
Proportional
butting my
lion's
head.
share. I mean, lion's share, proportionate, just based on literally a percentage, we can
Yeah.
look at it and show that. To answer your question, Matt, I think there was always an aim, I guess, on behalf of maybe the city or town, and obviously I don't know the complete history with everybody, to kind of come together and maybe look at some of the bylaw amendments, and it just never came to fruition really what it was. There might have been proposals from time to time, it just never came down. As to why we're here right now, obviously just the history of the agendas you can look and see. Yeah, the fire engine was approved in 2022 according to the purchase, but budgeting for that really came around now because the contract was to be completed, the engine was to be completed now. So going back to the city and the towns to get that budgeted amount, really where it came down to, we need to focus on the bylaws in order for us to kind of see what we can do to make it more enticing for communities to come in and what happens if they come out. And hopefully if we come to a good resolution, that we can recommend approval to all the municipalities, and hopefully in the sense of that, hope is there with the amended bylaws to get the budget approved, or get the fire engine, keep this district moving forward.
Is it, I haven't been involved in the discussions, and so anyone can correct me if I'm just completely in left field, but it reads to me like the city wants to have it set up this way so that it can get out and get it stuck. And I don't know if that's the elephant in the room or if I'm just wrong.
No, clearly not.
Okay.
Clearly not. It's a recognition that we're making a major purchase, which actually, as it turns out, we look at the depreciated value of the equipment is almost equal to what we have in depreciated equipment out there. So we're making a major investment going forward. And that major investment needs to be put in a context of how are we going to go forward with the understanding that all parties are treated equitably. And the current bylaws don't do that.
I got a comment. Historically, and I think Gary Page made a good point at the last meeting, is that basically we've got 700 people in the town of Napiaska, and our assessed valuation reflects the amount of property. Barry's got a similar situation. You have a similar situation in Ripon. So, as Gary stated, and I believe this is true, everybody's paying an equitable share now. It's based on the need for fire protection, and when they put the district together, they decided, hey, it's fair to do it based on the assessed valuations. One more comment. Historically, there are some old timers in my township that were present when the fire district was put together, and of course Gary was there, and they said that there was a reason why they did not make detachment an easy process, because, and of course they did lose one entity for sure, Matoman, after the district was formed, but they said it was done purposely so that it wouldn't be easy to tear it apart, and everyone agreed to that. Last comment, what I don't understand is it seems like if the city approved that truck purchase 3 years ago, why are we trying?
They didn't.
Oh.
It's not of any record. It was not properly processed, so let's make sure everybody's clear on the history, which I think you can speak to. We talked about this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the ultimate goal, kind of going back to what Tom Moniz said, is like, the fire engine purchase with the budget, with the district, and now with the city, that whole thing, it is what it is, right? So I get the point of why we're here today, the ad hoc committee, is really to discuss the goals of the bylaws, see what we can have a suitable option. So I propose, let's just get into it. Again, what Tom summarized earlier is, when we looked at it, yes, there are areas in LUT as well. So there are areas where we can kind of see we can button up here, make suggestions here and there. Obviously, the main area of the bylaw amendments are to focus on the attachment, detachment. So just kind of throwing it out there for discussion. I don't know if anybody kind of want to start. I would focus on that for right now for purposes of this. Of course, we can kind of come to the middle on other stuff if we need to, but for purpose of attachment, detachment, maybe importantly, detachment, I don't know, we can just kind of see what's out there to see what's most appropriate in fairness to the district itself and all the municipalities. So, I don't know, any kind of initial thoughts? And Tom and I kind of strategized a little earlier what we're kind of thinking. Again, not saying that amendments are inappropriate. That's not what we're saying by any means. Especially, it very well could be, right? Again, it's just kind of being the process of getting to it and what's fair for the whole, right? The district, the board itself, and all the municipalities, what's most appropriate. So, I don't know if anybody kind of had any initial thoughts on, I guess, detachment. Do you want to start from there? What we're thinking?
Well,
or
I
what you
guess
think?
as far as detachment, I mean, if we change these, I think that it has to be more specific. And I know you had mentioned, the host municipality gets the building, which is fine. The towns don't want or have a need for it in the city. But I think as far as, and also,
And that's only in the context, just so I can clarify, Barry, that what the city is saying is part of their share, exit share, would be the building. So they're not looking to close it out. In there, they have the proposal 1 year. I know that the administration's talked about 2 years, that you can't leave until you give 2 years' notice. I mean, we can talk about how long that needs to be if there's a fear that somebody's running. But what was in there was if we detach, we'd want the first right of the building because it's in our municipality, that's all. We're not saying the city gets the building because it's in the city.
right, and I guess with that, I agree with that the city
Should get the building.
Should.
Okay, all right.
Absolutely.
Then we can agree on that.
I think that there's maybe two primary variables in the detachment provision that if you start kind of macro and then narrow in, right, there's the concept of the timing. What, 1 year was in the draft, you just talked about
Yeah.
2. We
Yeah.
can talk about reasonable timeframes for how you kind of undertake these processes and procedures, because there's a lot that would come of this if a municipality announced an intention to detach. So you got the timing, and then I think you've got the valuation pricing mechanism, right? Those are the two big variables to sort of figure out. And if we can find some alignment on time considerations and then valuation / pricing considerations, then a lot of the details that fall under that, I think, are a lot lighter lifts, quite frankly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a good place to start.
So what is it was a question that I had this morning when I was thinking about this. Like, what is the best practice for figuring out depreciation of everyone's infrastructure and equipment here, right? Because that's the biggest question, right? There's $10 million today, right? Tomorrow there's 999,998. Like, how does that happen, right? Is it yearly? There's an accounting depreciation calculation done, and then everyone has their proportion, right? 75, 25. I just don't know if there's a best practice that exists for municipalities in this.
Yeah. Typically, what I've seen reviewing with intergovernmental agreements with police and fire districts, I guess separately, depreciation of value is kind of just exactly what you said, the kind of a calculation of depreciation when it's purchased, I guess, for specifically here, the ownership for all municipalities of that item and what it's valued at, and then just the depreciated value, how it gets there, might be more of a finance question than me, but.
Way over my head.
Yeah, right, and then you just kind of run that depreciated value when that detaching municipality wants to leave, right? So Tom and I were kind of talking about this earlier. Let's hypothetically say that there's an asset sheet for RAFD, and it lists ownership by value for the fire engine, let's put it that, or the ladder truck, for example. And then depreciates obviously over the years, and all of a sudden you have notice, X years later, this municipality wants to leave, and we depreciate that value based on the percentage of the ownership, right? How to actually figure out the depreciated value?
Moves out of you guys in your accounting.
Yeah, I mean, either that, or you could do an appraisal. Again, the ideas aren't necessarily correct by doing like an appraised value or depreciated value or something along those lines, but again, that's probably more relevant to finance. Please do.
Sean's valid.
So the fire district every year has an audit, and so there's audited financial statements. 25 is not done yet. I have 24s here. Basically, after you take depreciation into effect, the value of the fire department at the end of 2024 was $2.4 million. Of that $2.4 million, about $1.2 million of it was the land and building. You had about $900,000 of other vehicles and other equipment of undepreciated value, and you had about $250,000 to $270,000 of like cash or equity on the books. So you have about a $2.4 million value that we're kind of talking about when you're talking about splitting pie or how things would go. That's kind of what you're talking about.
And again, back to what Patrick was saying, that's the depreciated value of the books.
Depreciated
That's the
value
book
on their
value.
books
Currently, right now,
as of 2024, end of 24.
So the argument could be made, well, what's its market value? Correct?
Correct.
Somebody may pay more for a used truck
That's fair.
than the appreciated value. So, I mean, just that's full disclosure. But the appreciated value is his value, so he can tell you what's on the books, because there have been audits.
Correct.
So it isn't like we're dealing with a...
And I did some of the drafting of some of that initial amendments that were proposed to the bylaws last fall. And I don't know what the appraised value of the building and land would be. You know, the carrying value is 1.2 million. I'm not sure if, you know, maybe it's 1.5. You know, if it's 1.5 and the city was saying they're gonna acquire this as part of something, if something ever happened, I feel like the city should have to pay 1.5 and not get it at the book value. So I was just trying to make sure that everything was fair and equal and was not slanted the city's way if something changed, right? They're asking for the consideration of kind of common sense that they'd be able to acquire, but I would think if the fair market value is higher than the book value, that they should, that the city taxpayers, if they chose to go down that road, would have to pay what that higher value was if that was the case. So,
Okay.
Which I'd agree with.
That's fair. And I mean, I guess the value is, you know, obviously to be determined based on the year of someone detaching. It's just like what to do when that happens, right? I think is the main purpose.
and the city doesn't want to detach. The city just wants to say if we're putting $800,000, $700,000 in towards the truck, that it's not, you know,
Gone money.
you know, it just doesn't go away in 5 years if the fire EMS models in the entire state change because all emergency equipment continues to go up in price. That if something changes, that you have something, you know, it doesn't go to zero. It doesn't have to be 100% or even depreciated or whatever, but at least they're saying that there's an equity interest like they have in every other asset that they purchase that we put on our books. There is a value that remains with the city, and basically, once it goes to a separate entity, it actually goes to zero per our bylaws, so you wouldn't have like any carrying value of the assets necessarily.
So, you can go.
Oh, no, I'm going to screw the whole thing up and say, before we get too far into the means and methods, I wonder, I don't know what the makeup is of the board or the committee, if I'm going to screw up a quorum thing, or if I grab these two and talk with them quickly, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, before we get too far down this path, is that?
I don't think there's any problem.
Do I have am I
I
in
see
an
this
open
as
meeting
ad
over there?
hoc.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead and grab.
You guys
I
want
just
to
so
I'm fine.
in that context, I just soon kind of kick it with the other,
Yeah.
with the attorneys here as well, so.
Yeah, okay. Just before we get too far down the path,
Yeah, concept change.
just have,
H, for what it's worth, you know, I don't study this very closely, but H seems to be the model that the city is suggesting for whatever it's worth, and it's in the current bylaws.
That's current, or is that the
This is
proposed,
current.
is it the proposed
That's
amendment?
the current.
That's, okay, not with the
H
proposed
of the
amendment.
current
Okay.
bylaws that currently exist, and nobody's really looked at it, but it's kind of the model we're talking about. And I don't know how that would occur, you know, so it isn't a foreign concept. If the state legislature, which I have no idea how they would get involved in the fire district, I have no idea, but that's what it says. It says exactly what the city's asking for. So it isn't like we're pulling it out of thin air.
Yeah, some key differences, but the concept is there.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the key difference?
Well, it says compensated as much as reasonably possible. I mean,
Okay.
that's a significant difference from fair market value
Well,
of
yeah,
appraised
and again,
assets.
I did that just to say,
And
Yeah.
it also
Yeah.
is that conceptually that paragraph in H is talking about if there's a statutorily forced exit of one of the municipal members.
clearly, but
And,
it's
well,
in there.
but that point being a municipality's hand is played for them by the legislator is a different strategic scenario than if a municipality says, we just want to leave. So I think that's a difference.
I can recognize that, which gets at the heart of the issue here, again. If, you know, it's the elephant in the room, if we don't want to talk about it, so be it. But that's the concept that we got to get to. So however we go around that circle, it isn't like it's a foreign concept, okay? What's being
Of what?
requested.
No,
The idea that they get a proportionate share.
No, I agree with you. It's definitely not.
It isn't like,
it's not a
it wasn't
concept.
ever thought of.
The,
It's in there.
Again, going back kind of my experiences with police and fire intergovernmental agreements, that is common.
Yeah.
Having some kind of detachment, proportional share,
Proportional
when
share.
someone detaches, what that looks like.
That's all we're looking at. And I don't know, I don't want to play the game that we're not going to consider this. If they're not going to consider it, great. We don't have much more to do here,
Well,
okay?
I think, not to speak for them, but
Yeah.
at the last meeting, I think everyone that's around this table agreed in really legitimate good faith to come here and talk about bylaw changes.
Okay.
And that includes detachment and includes a host of other things too. So let's, I think, not make assumptions yet about where they might be at. And let's work through it, as Patrick said. I think that's what we've got to do. That was what everyone came here to do.
Ultimately, everybody wants the same goal,
Yes.
right? Keep the district moving
Yeah.
and get
Yeah,
fire engine.
and I guess that's the point. That's why I want to make
Yeah.
very clear.
Right.
The city, I mean, the idea that Tom was, we don't want to exit. It's a working arrangement.
From the
Yeah.
accounting side, Lud, that the way the bylaws are written is very common for a new fire district in the first 10 years of incorporation, because they want to make sure that everyone that's
Everybody
signing
sees it.
on is committed at the beginning.
Exactly.
You know, and now that we have an established district, you know, with numbers, now, after 10 years, then a lot of
Yeah,
times
the
they
deck has
evolve
been-
to different financial
The
practices.
deck has been reshuffled with losing
You know,
a
and
couple,
that's kind
and
of, we're just saying, you know, we're all together, it makes sense for the city to allow the town to, you know, share costs, and, I mean, they surround us, right? It's, the map works, we want to continue to work with them, we just don't want to be in a situation
where we're held hostage.
where, correct, that,
Which is
that
really
it's
the
like,
point of it.
you know, there's got to be some equity. Now, what that equity amount is, they have to decide what makes sense and what they're comfortable with, but the city doesn't want to pull out.
Yeah, and I
The
think
city wants
that's,
to grow and have a model that is enticing for the next person to come in to say, okay, we're gonna be hopefully buying this engine, and, you know, now our assets are gonna go from 2.4 to 3.3 in like 1 year, or 2 years, I guess, till the end of '26. But we want Matoman to come in and pay 10% over, you know, 30,000 a year for the next 10 years as a buy-in to get some kind of stake, and then also buy in at 10% of our future capital, because we know more capital is coming in 4 or 5 years, right? So we want it to be a better district and have more cost savings for us and the town. But we can't, you know, it's hard to tell someone that you should come in when our agreement that we're telling you to come into says, but you don't get anything. Once you contribute, you're stuck here and you're donating.
No, I think that's appropriate, Sean, and that's a fair comment.
And it's actually real, I think Town of Matoman is thinking on the other end to get out of where they're at.
yeah, and I think.
And I looked at that agreement, and they're not tied to the agreement.
And then the flip side of that too is the attachment discussion, which is probably an easier discussion,
Right.
but there's the concept of how do you create the right incentives on both ends of this coin?
Yeah.
And that's where I think, I hear everything you just said. It can also be, when I talked about a chilling effect at the last meeting, if we suddenly flip the switch on the attachment methodology requires a 100% valuation buy-in.
Yeah.
That's a steep hill to climb.
I agree
for
with that.
6
That's, I was
municipalities.
thinking about your term, and on the attachment end, it makes sense. You don't want to
Right, so.
put somebody out
if
there,
you
and
buy
why would
a-
I join
Complete
with?
deterrence.
Yeah.
Right, you buy the new truck, you double the value of the
Yeah,
district,
yeah,
and then you
now
say,
you gotta
you want
buy in.
in? You know,
You
you
gotta
gotta
buy
pay
in.
for it, and that's tricky too.
I agree with that.
So we're probably at a point, we've got an agreement that's 0 and 0 on both fronts, right? And what was proposed by the city was kind of 100%, 100% on both fronts. And the reality is, I think, figuring out
The middle.
where can
What's the happy
everyone.
medium?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
With some flexibility in payments and not charging interest or things, you're trying to make it a little more enticing. because if we get them to join, there's more efficiencies and everyone that's an existing member pays less for operations, because the thought is you're not gonna have to really increase operational costs that much to go to that neighboring community. You know, until you get to a point you need a second location or station, you don't really have to worry about increasing costs for service that much.
Right.
Okay.
I feel like depending on where they come back in, wherever they align, it seems like the logical piece that we should talk through. Because I feel like they bought into, there needs to be a proportional, right? Whether they agree to it in vote, right, that's debatable, right? But I think they agreed to the theory that when you detach, you get your proportion. I think we should work through how and what that proportion is. And I think that's the next logical piece. I think the year, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3, I think that's an easier conversation, right? Like,
Yeah, I think
one is a bad taste, it's 2, right?
Yeah.
Does 2 work? Is it 2 plus the finishing your budget season? Is it the current budget season plus 2 or something like that?
And I think that timing that was in there leads towards some of the interpretation that you hear from folks, because 12 months is an exceedingly short time when you're talking about this sort of municipal
Sure.
unwinding. And so that causes people to say, well, why such a short time frame, right? So if there's I agree with you, it should be a simpler conversation, because there's examples out there that give us some guidance on what's reasonable and the sort of things that just practically have to happen to actually do that.
Yeah.
And then I think that alleviates some of the concern that there's anyone looking for the quick exit valve, right? So if we take everyone at their face that's not the case, then put an appropriate time frame on it, and I think that resolves the issue.
Yeah.
We've got scrambling too with what they do to try to make the district survive. You know, like Tom said, a quick exit valve, and then what, you know, if there's 2 or 3 possibly municipalities left, but what are we gonna do to try to fund it? Yeah, I'm not gonna take hypotheticals of what could happen if this or then that, but 12 months is just an awfully short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I picture it on my end, right? Like, you're not always gonna be our city attorney, right? I'm not always gonna be a city councilor, so I have no idea what, like, the history of
Oh, yeah.
Ripon is gonna be in
This
the
is-
future. And like, we both live here, we all, you know, and like, I wouldn't want them to just, like, 10 years from now, if I'm not here, abandon all of the surrounding areas, right?
Yeah.
Like, we all still have to live in the same community. That's not a good situation for anybody, so.
And you see where just negotiating a contract for contracted municipal services can take the better part of a year. You know, so I mean, we're not even talking about full detachment procedures. So these things just, they take time. They just do, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right, well, why don't we just start with that? What are your guys' initial thoughts? And we'll update the towns when they come back, obviously. What are your thoughts on giving a 3-year notice with prior dissolution, or I'm sorry, prior withdrawal?
Yeah, so I guess I came in thinking, current budget season plus 2 is what made sense to me.
Okay.
Right, like, I feel like if we say just 2, like, you're always cutting it somewhere, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like, and maybe that's not, I don't work in municipal, I work in, like, private, right? And like, picturing any of my projects cutting half into like a budget cycle is like really problematic for me when I try to like plan that out. So that's why I was thinking just
Right.
current budget plus 2.
Okay.
So like when you say current budget, the remaining
The remainder
months
of,
under the budget year that the
Yeah.
notice comes in on,
yeah,
plus 2
Plus
calendar
2,
years.
correct.
Oh, yeah.
The current calendar year plus 2 calendar years.
yeah, whatever's remaining, right? If we were here, when is ours approved, like November? Can't
Yeah,
remember.
so if our budget was November 12th, it would be the end of, it would be that year potentially and 2 more years
Yeah.
after. So it'd be at least
So if it came in
25,
October, it would
26
be
months minimum.
1 month, right? It'd be 25 months. Right?
Sure.
If it was July, it would be 29.
Just strategically be more advantageous for the ones we're trying to be at the end of the election season.
But
that's
that's
just kinda-
guaranteeing a full
2 years.
24-month period of
Right,
time.
Minimum 25.
Minimum,
Right. And I was even thinking, because 3 years could maybe be seen, but, so again, we just brought up the conversation of like starting somewhere where we do for detaching communities. What does a notice look like? So currently proposed right now is 365 days, I think, 12 months or whatever the language was. So kind of starting fresh, what would it look like? And we kind of thought of the topic of, what about notice plus 3 years? Then I think talked about, well, what the remainder of the budget's like plus 2 additional years, so right minimum 25 months at minimum where it would be. When we were talking about kind of 3 years as a start, we could even, throw in language along the lines of like, unless otherwise agreed by an MOU or something along those lines. I don't want to be, that hypothetical on that, but, meaning, we don't need to wait 3 years. We got everything figured out for this community leaving. You're good to go in 18 months or something like that. Right? But minimum, if there's no agreement on that, right, you're going to stay 3. But budget plus 2.
Budget year plus 2 years.
Thoughts from the town's perspective about timing, or do you want to?
So I'll tell you why I pulled them aside, and that is 2 reasons. One is I represent 2 towns. I got to make sure everybody's sort of on the same page.
Good point.
I don't step in it.
Full disclosure.
And get myself sued by these guys for malpractice or something, or a bar. And number 2, I just, as I'm checking the mental boxes in my own mind, before we started getting too far into the weeds on how do we set up this buyout, I wanted to put it to the towns and say, this assumes or implies that you want there to be a change in the bylaws, and are we at that point? Is there need to be a discussion about that? So on and so forth. And the answer I think is still a yes, is a version of it, but to talk through how we get there, their initial reaction to me is that the towns don't see that there's a need, and that the towns don't see anything as being broken and in need of fix, and that's primarily the city's perspective, but that they've liked, as far as detachment goes, they understand the policy behind it to have been, it should be hard to get out so that we can keep the band together and whatnot. And they still want there to be some, they still want that sort of deterrent effect to exist, because it's a good thing in there. So, question 1 is, do you want to do it? They don't want to do it in and of themselves. They have to sort of be convinced, I think is the way to put it. Number 2, I agree with the comments about separating this out from the fire truck. It's hard to, which I agree with, but it's also hard because the city has it tied to the fire truck. And so right now, the practical thing is it's costing money, because it is this sort of like leverage thing that's being held over the towns. If I understand the dynamic right, it's at this point costing you guys money, or will soon, or at least the loss of a discount.
Every day we wait now, we
Yeah.
lose 152 or 150.
That's why we're here.
And so,
That's why we're here.
I agree with the idea of keeping the fire truck separate. It's hard to keep the fire truck separate when the fire truck, as of right now, is expressly being held over,
Right,
it's
so
like a leverage.
the sooner we get an agreement, the sooner we save money, if we can get an agreement. That's kind of why they are tied. And I appreciate the
Is the
comment,
city's
but they're
formal
tied.
position that there will be no budget?
Approval, which is what the motion was.
Well, I understand
Unanimous,
that,
yeah.
I understand that was the motion.
Yeah.
So from the city council, right, like I'll give you at least my answer, right? Like it doesn't necessarily need to be, right? Because it will go back and we'll
Sure.
vote on it again. And I don't know how everybody will vote, right? I have no idea. So it could be approved or it could not, right?
You mean like amendments?
Yeah, the amended budget,
Right.
right? It will go back.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The amended budget will go back like it did last time, right? And last time it was approved with the fire district and the municipalities approving of the bylaws. That doesn't necessarily need to happen again, but it will depend on how the vote goes.
Yeah, because you understand the feeling of it is that the city says, we're gonna blow the whole thing up, get you all in breach of contract. We're willing to sort of throw the whole thing
That's the elephant in the room, that's why I brought it.
Right.
Yeah, and so I'm with
Yeah,
Bud here,
yeah,
which is,
yeah.
there's some, we gotta talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the fire truck,
Yeah.
but only in this,
Yeah.
hopefully in the sense of, let's get the fire truck thing dealt with, and then we can talk about bylaws.
Yeah, and obviously, putting the cart before the horse isn't gonna work. Yeah, they have to be in concert, that's what my client said, not me. My client said they're in concert by unanimous vote,
Yeah, I
and
understand.
the two are tied.
I
So,
think that's why we're here.
yeah, exactly, exactly. you know.
I completely hear you guys, right? And coming from our perspective, right, we don't represent the towns of the municipality.
Yeah,
Tom and I represent the
exactly.
district.
Yeah,
So what's the best interest of the district is to
Existed.
exist.
Okay.
Bingo on that,
Exactly.
exactly. And in furtherance of it, right, the elephant in the room, the fire engine, right? Get the fire engine, keep the district going.
Mhm.
And that's why rather than things, I guess, be going nuclear, it's, coming here to see what we can do with amending these bylaws if something
Right.
is feasible. I think there are some, like I said, collectively, we can look here's some good suggestions. Attachments, I think there's probably a willingness to see if we can get something on that, but detachment obviously is maybe a little bit, well, what can we do to appease everybody and send it back to the boards and the council to see what could be suitable, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that the amendments as proposed, or whatever Led proposes, or Matt proposes, or Tom proposes, we're gonna do that, right? It's just, again, open for discussion.
Yeah.
So if there is an absolute unwillingness to talk about detachment at all, then we obviously wanna talk about that first, rather than start throwing out ideas. Because I think we can get there, we just wanna make sure we're on the same page of let's start the
Yeah,
conversation.
and that's why I pulled him aside to ask that question. And I
Right.
think the answer, you guys, again, tell me if I'm stepping in, I think the answer is yes, but, right? And the but is we have to do it right. I have before we do that, I have a technical question about the fire truck purchase, just so that I can contextualize all this, and that is, was the fire truck purchased by the district?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a contract that was approved by the district and signed by the district to,
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
okay.
So the district is on the line, supposedly there's a penalty clause of $300,000.
Right, that's what I'm trying to get a handle on. So
Yeah.
if everything went sideways, I don't want to steal your copy.
No, you can have it, I have electronic right here.
If this all went sideways, which I hope that it doesn't, but if it did, just to understand the ramifications of different things,
Yeah.
then what happens? Pierce sues the fire district and says you owe us $300,000?
Do you remember, Tom, specifically, kind of what would the ramifications be for, like, it's not necessarily like a breach, but.
Liquidated
There
damage
you go, I think-
clause,
Yeah,
I think
it's-
somebody threw that, I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
it's basically, and I can't say if it's 300,000
Probably
exactly, but it's basically the amount that you're obligated to pay if you back out of the contract, right? So
There's
it's like
language
a
in there, Matt.
contractually agreed liquidated damages provision, essentially, is what it amounts to.
Because they sell the truck to somebody else. And maybe if they sell the truck to somebody else, you get some of that money back.
Because the,
don't know.
a thing that I saw.
Mitigate damage.
Oh,
I
is
just want
this-
to point that out to you, that it isn't a foreign concept in the agreement with proportional share. I just wanted to make sure. And I
Okay.
appreciate the town is saying, why are we doing anything? I get it.
Well, yeah, just,
Okay.
the city's asking to change the status quo, so
Yeah.
you know why. The purchase of the fire, early on, we talked about the purchase of the fire truck was not authorized. Not to get hyper technical, but it sounds like the purchase of the fire truck was authorized because the fire district purchased the fire truck.
Correct.
And I've read in the bylaws that the fire district has the authority to make purchases.
Correct.
So it's not the purchase that was unauthorized, it was the budgeting, the money
Right.
to pay for it that was,
Yeah, well, I think you're very close, and to put a little twist on it, the purchase was authorized under the bylaws. The district remains exclusive authority to make purchase decisions for the district.
yeah.
That, of course, to make purchases, you have to budget for it. And so, there's been a budget proposed to the municipalities to provide the funding for the purchase of that fire truck. And that remains in limbo because it's not yet been approved by the municipalities.
Right, yeah. So I don't know, but I mean, maybe that is another thing to be fixed with the bylaws. It puts the district as an entity in a tough position because now it's bought something that it can't pay for it just yet. But it also strikes me that stuff probably should have come up in 2022, but didn't until now, and I guess that is what it is. But, so the discussion that we had was, there's willingness to talk about modifications. But those modifications still need to serve that purpose that I understand, I've learned, is why all of these agreements going back to '04 say if you're out, you forfeit your stuff, and that is so that it's not easy to get out.
And that's why I was pointing at H per use. It isn't a foreign concept that if the legislature stepped in and forced the parties to abandon this idea, there is a proportional share of.
Yeah.
So it isn't like it's.
So that's like the no fault.
Yeah, exactly, and so, and again, Tom said what Tom said. And, in the evolution of this, things change. And clearly the district went south for a while. And we can all talk about what that is, but we don't need to, okay? We don't need to. And how we got there, we don't need to. But clearly there was mismanagement. No question about that. That's evident by public records. So here we are saying, okay, let's keep this thing together, but let's certainly be upfront in terms of how we address
Yeah.
the potential,
One
not the
thing that we
probability.
talked about while you were out in the hall, which I think might be helpful to the point you're making, is we were talking about some finance discussions, and Sean was kind of helping us understand things. And the reality is this, where we're at under the current agreement is both from an attachment and detachment perspective, it's a 0% game, right? There's no cost to enter, and there's no cost, you don't recoup anything when you leave, right? It's 0% on both sides of that coin. What the city's proposal was that if you buy in, you've got to buy in at 100% proportional share of value, and if you leave, you get 100% of your proportional share of value, right? So we kind of have this spectrum of being at 0 and then being all in. And it strikes me, to your point, that there's probably some reasonable middle ground to both incentivize people to buy in without maybe it feeling too steep of a climb to buy in at a very steep purchase price, and to figure out how you create incentive. And part of that could be having reasonable value that you get if you ever had to leave, right? But to still feel like there's some incentive to not leave, to your point. And that's, maybe there's some reasonable discussion about how you get something of value if you need to leave. One way to de-incentivize that is to have an appropriate time frame, right? Because a longer 2 or 3 year time frame means that there is long-term thought going into why decisions are being made.
Yeah.
And then the other piece, I think, is what's that payout structure look like? And if we're not at 100%, is there gradated sort of
That's
tiered
exactly what we're
structures
talking
that allow you to create the incentive while also allowing someone to materialize something of value?
That's what we talked about too. There needs to be enough notice for everybody to figure out what's going on, because time goes fast.
Yeah.
And so there, I think there needs to be a lengthy notice period so that everyone can contingency plan. And also, we've got the sort of vesting, I don't know what to call it, but on the front end, why don't you do that on the back end too? So if you jump ship immediately, you don't get your proportionate value. You get a reduced percentage of your proportionate value, and the longer you stick around post-amendment, you sort of earn more of that. And that helps to deter the situation where, again, maybe I'm just spooked, but it deters a situation where the bylaws get amended, and then everybody, parties look and they think, well, now's a good chance to get out, let's just get out.
And that's why
It
it's
makes it harder
relevant what
to do
we
that.
got.
Yeah.
What we got, and depreciated value is not a lot. So the idea that we're suddenly
Yeah.
rolling the dice to go get our share of not much doesn't make any sense, so.
Yeah, so maybe
The idea that the
it's all
city's
house
running anywhere isn't the concept.
Well, let's play, I think that's similar to what we just talked about. It's similar, I think that's an interesting concept. Can we put some thoughts or numbers or percentages to that and see where that discussion goes?
Did I say too much, guys?
Probably.
I usually do.
We're lawyers after all. Every word out of our mouths, Barry thinks is one word too many.
Very
We all think that, you guys finally realize that.
So what's a good time frame
Let's start with that,
for, right?
like a notice.
Yeah, for what's a good time frame that we could all agree on that is a notice, that's a safe notice? And maybe it is 3, maybe it needs to be 3, and it's higher than I thought.
I guess it's, the answer, the generic answer is, what would it involve to find fire protection in some other fashion, and how long is that gonna take?
Amro had just do it in like no time. They literally were told by Oshkosh they're done this year, and they formed some kind of district. I also represent Amro, they did this year, so they got no time, which wasn't fair.
Yeah.
Clearly, I think Jonathan's suggestion that the budget year plus 2 makes sense, and I know that in the document that the city acted on, it was
It was
1 year.
yeah, and
So-
a year goes fast.
Right, year goes fast. So I think budget year plus 2 makes a lot of sense. So it doesn't trigger until you complete the budget year. You gotta be in anyways, you gotta pay. No question about that. Nobody's arguing that you don't finish the year paying your bills. But, 2 years after that seems reasonable.
Because the next one I'd throw out would be the time that you need to stay in a district before you can leave with any vestment of your finances. And I would, I guess 5.
Was that in your initial draft 5, or is that a recent draft?
I saw it in there.
I just threw out 5, but it could be more, I mean,
For anybody that joins,
Right.
they gotta be here 5 before they,
If you leave within 5, you
you're done.
forfeit your
You're done.
forfeit.
Take your bag and pack.
Now, one other thought I had is I talked about how, I don't want to derail the discussion, but since this came up, if we talk about the price to come in is steep, and if we want to offer some discount off that fair market value price, you could also tie in something that if a municipality leaves within that 5 years, not only do they not vest in sort of the detachment payout, but could they be obligated to basically recompensate the district for what the full buy-in should have been, right? So you almost offer an incentive to stay longer to earn your discount on the front end. These are the mechanisms we could start to build in here to get to a place that appeases all the municipalities, plus future municipalities.
So if you come in at a discount, right, and then if you leave within 5 years, you have to pay that discount back.
Right, so if you come in and you get to buy in at, you put whatever
Yeah,
percent.
20%.
If you get to buy in at a
25.
discount and then you leave within 5 years, not only are you not leaving with asset value, but there may be an additional penalty to pay back what your discount was that you earned preemptively. Those could be the sorts of components that create incentive to join.
Right.
And also disincentive to leave. And if we can start to marry those types of concepts, that's where I think we find resolution, and from a district's perspective. So to you guys, why make any change? Those types of steps forward are beneficial for the district because you start to create incentives on both sides that can be beneficial not only to the municipalities, but those are the sorts of things that are beneficial to the district at whole, because it starts to put a reasonable boundary around both ends of attachment and detachment. Does that make sense? And conceptually, anyway?
A new city would come in to see if I don't have to buy it at 100%, right? Buying it.
I agree with that, Tom, I really do. The concept that you have to pay full freight doesn't make any sense.
I think you'll have a lot of municipalities that just won't even
Wouldn't bother.
won't even engage in a conversation because it's
And
too
with
steep.
mutual aid, you still got
Right.
people fighting fires for nothing, with no buy-in.
What does it mean, just because I'm not smart enough to figure this out myself? If they buy in at a discount, but will they generate more expense by virtue of being a member, and they're not going to offset it, and then everybody else is subsidizing it for a period of time? Is that?
They're gonna pay their
what
bill
happens?
every year. They're just not gonna have to pay a buy-in.
Yeah,
First year.
they're,
So they
they're,
got a proportionate share of all the expenses of the,
Operations
that's
budget.
100%
right.
of their equalized value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from the district's perspective, the concept of any buy-in at attachment date is a net win for the district because that's additional dollars in the coffers. And then that municipality, from day one of their budget cycle, is responsible for their proportionate cost share.
Okay, so that's
Did I
a
put that right?
Yeah.
recognition of the existing value of the district or
Right,
whatever.
it's recognizing, I think the concept, if I can speak for the city's proposal, the concept of any buy-in on attachment is to recognize we're coming into something that has now already been built and has some value and has some intrinsic setup that
You have to get into the capital.
didn't exist back when the district first created because it was being built, right? It was being built from scratch once upon a time. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yep, it does.
So the buy-in from, sorry if I'm interrupting, but, so basically you have 2.4 million of assets that you guys have all put in to create this value. And without a buy-in, they're not putting a dollar towards being able to use any of that 2.4 million. So that's where you
Yeah.
could say it has a value to be able to access what you guys built.
Yep. Yeah, that's the concept of why some buy-in is reasonable, because you're availing yourself of some benefit, you know? But if you provide a municipality some discount on that to create a give and a take, that would actually incentivize them to do that.
And then the penalty on the backside. Yeah, it makes absolute sense to me. I mean, I certainly would
So-
recommend to the city that buy-in thing comes way down.
So that we kind of derailed that. We were getting into the timing discussion, and then you kind of deferred to these guys. Do we want to get back to that, the notice period?
So budget year +2 for the notice. I don't know enough to know whether that's a reasonable amount of time.
Well, the question, nobody knows how long is it gonna take to put a district together, and, I mean, we're by law, we have to provide fire protection,
Yeah.
as does
So
Barry.
either you're finding someone else to contract with, or you're putting together a new version of this.
You know.
Yeah.
And I'm being serious, Amro did it in 5 months. It's how long it took him to put together the thing and have fire protection, ambulance. Just, they had to do it.
It is common to see, I don't know, I mean, there could be some with zero, I mean, what it looks like for 0 months, and you can just leave whatever. It is common to see more than 1 year, let's just put it that way, in these intergovernmental agreements. So I don't mind the idea. I mean, I think we kind of started with the 3, just, you know, that is a nice coverage for those municipalities who have to provide, right? Amro, for example, is scrambling to do it,
Yeah.
but it prevents a scrambling. Maybe 3 is too long when, you know, a city in the future wants to leave. So the prorated months of the budget year, let's just say 6 or whatever, for example, plus 24 months, you get 30 months to figure it out. Or, I mean, minimum 25,
Yeah.
right? Let's say you do it in, whatever, it's in September, so you do it in August.
I
So
can
you're gonna have a
support
25
that.
months.
I can support that. I think that's a reasoned place to land.
What do you guys think from the town's perspective?
So minimum it's gonna be 2 years.
2 years plus to figure out either who you're gonna go to, or to form your own fire district, which is what's left of. And that assumes, all of this is now assuming that the city's the one leaving, and not you guys,
Yeah.
right?
The other thing I'll throw in there, I mean,
Yeah, flip it the
because
other way.
we're just kind of, we're spitballing a little
Maybe
bit.
Hudson wants to leave.
You could say the partial budget year plus, but you could say that the notice can't come after a certain point in the budget year. I mean, so you can build in some
You have a
guardrails.
window.
You can make it.
So it disincentivizes a municipality from sort of
Doing
playing
that.
games when they've already made a decision, but just are gonna hold it back.
Right, right. Strategically, it's best to do it towards the end.
Right, so if you said, you know, current budget year plus 2 calendar years, but notice must be given, you know, can't be given after halfway through the budget cycle, something to that effect.
Yeah.
Or you could just say, you know, I guess split it down if you want to go that way. Just, you know, no sooner than 30 months. Something like that. So that's 2.5 years.
It's semantics, it's, we gotta find the time frame.
Right, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Strong ideas. But I think the consensus takeaway is that 2 years is appropriate plus. And that's kind of inappropriate. Maybe 3 is too much.
Yeah.
So
Three is fine.
Okay.
And the-
No, and I'm looking at it from maybe Upton's or Town of Ripon's point of view, they gotta pay. They're in. They gotta keep paying when they're trying to figure out where they're going next. So, yeah, it's even harder on them.
Yeah, I mean, every municipality for that matter
Yeah.
would do the same.
Yeah, yeah,
Right, so
you know
their
what I'm
obligations,
saying?
yeah, your obligations remain, you don't just kind of
If they get a
forfeit.
better offer
Right,
from
the fire engine's gonna keep going down within
Oshkosh
those 30 months or 24
some
months.
big fire department,
Right.
for any of the absent.
And
Closer to.
and we don't need to lock in a final decision, but are we close enough to some consensus on that we could treat it as a conceptual idea to take the next step to
Yeah,
the next variable?
I'm good with it. I'm good with your suggestion. Somewhere in that ballpark, I'm good with it.
And this is just notice of intent to withdraw, notice of intent to withdraw, right? No, you cannot leave within so many months, right? So it's not like, here's a notice, we're leaving tomorrow, good luck. And so it's gonna be a minimum of X months, right? That's just the starting point.
You guys? It's not so much a legal issue, more of a practical one. Feel all right?
And again, not to
And it cuts.
state the
both ways,
obvious,
right?
nothing we're discussing binds anybody. So
Yeah, no, that's a
All
good
you're
point.
doing
Bob,
is
you bring
bringing-
up. We're just throwing it out just for the concept
spitballing.
of getting in the right
I
direction.
guess on my end, I'm picturing, right, the output of this meeting is you guys are probably gonna have some other emails between
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
a week to 2 weeks, there
Yeah.
will be something that comes back to us that then we all sit down and
Yeah.
look at, and maybe it's good, and maybe it's not.
Yeah,
And again,
the-
timing,
The verbiage, I think,
Yeah.
what's right, but it just, the actual idea, putting the principle down is what it is, and that's what we can't take away. And especially for us, if we don't have direction from, the committee as a whole, so it's just, we can't do anything, right? Obviously, you two are representing the communities, and understandable, but especially for Tom and I, we're in a little bit different situation, so. And that's just, again, just not saying that municipalities, all three of them won't agree with it, it's just getting in the direction of saying, what would be appropriate, right? Not just for Ripon, town, Bieskin, or any future municipality that comes in, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to leave in the future, we think that 24, 20, 30 months or whatever would be appropriate. It's pretty fair. It is pretty common to see something like that in these agreements. I review them, so. Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay, so kind of remaining budget year +2, provided we provide that notice within a reasonable point in the year, and we can play with some language in the proposed revisions, but maybe let's go to the next concept, which is, we seem to have some alignment on the attachment concept and decreasing that buy-in value. Should we start with an alignment topic? Where we have some agreement, maybe? Let's talk about attachment then. Okay. What do we think that buy-in percent should be?
Would that,
I'm okay with 20%, just throw the number out there.
I would say it feels good, but like I honestly have no reference point.
Yeah.
You could have said 15. And I'd be
Yeah, I know,
like,
I know. I don't either, I'm just thinking
I mean, the
along
best-
the lines of, you need more members, and so why would you not try to get them in the door?
I guess what, oh, no, you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess, one thing would have to be considered is somebody that's coming in. And if it's a smaller, like now,
They don't have the
we all pay by assessed value.
Yeah.
Well, if they only have this much, I mean, here again,
Yeah.
whatever. If they only have this much assessed value, they maybe aren't gonna wanna pay 20%.
Well, I
mean,
think we're talking about 20% of their proportional share of the total assessed value, right? We're not
Right.
talking about 20% of the
We're not
district's
hitting with the
value.
whole deal.
Not 20% of the
No,
district.
no, no,
No.
no.
Okay.
So
Okay,
we're,
okay.
Of their
so
assessment.
let's take the town of Ripon as, pretend you weren't in the district. Your proportional cost share is what? Is it 10%, give or take?
Ours now?
Yeah.
18.7.
Okay, 18. So the scenario would be, you're looking at joining the Ripon Area Fire District. We would do some calculations on what your percentage cost share would be based on assessed, improvements within the district to arrive at what your percentage would be. That determines it's 18%. And so what we're saying is your buy-in would be 20% of 18% of the district's, book value based on the last year's most recent audited financial statements. Maybe we could play with the details, but that's the concept. Is that what you were saying when you said 20%, or when you said 20%?
No, and so the way, exactly what you said, I was just taking it from Matoman's point of view, right? Knowing Matoman is in this situation potentially today, and we're 2.4, right? And Matoman would be,
Just use 10%.
what is it?
We'll just guess 10%.
10%, right? So Matoman would be 10%, right? And I'm just cutting that slice of pie smaller, and 20% feels like it gets it to a number that would be appealing for
Yeah,
Matoman,
why wouldn't you do it?
right?
So
Because
buy-in's
if
48,000.
that wasn't an option,
That's what it'd be?
the other option would
If it's
be,
10%, they'd have 48,000 buy-in plus their 10% of the operating budget going forward.
And we give them time to pay that.
That's 20% of 10% is the 48K.
Yeah.
And then we talk about the
Some time to
terms
pay.
for
yeah,
that
and
payment.
then they have
Yeah.
a period of time to pay that, right? It doesn't all need to be upfront. And the other option available to them, if we weren't here, is private fire service, which is expensive, or contracting to somewhere else, which would be a longer response time and potentially more expensive. So it feels like 20% is directionally accurate.
Just the initial buy-in.
Yeah.
Now, we can couple that with, not to get too far out of it, right, but this whole point of why we're talking about this reduction amount, when you detach within 5 years, you're
You
going
get
to not only forfeit that, you're going to pay that 20% back,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? So you're buying it at 80, and then if you leave early, you're paying the full thing back, plus you're forfeiting. I guess in the simplest terms.
Yeah, right, yeah, and that's fine.
But-
That gives them incentive to stay. So they don't cut and run and go back to,
But that's a really good point.
Fairwater
to bring up,
Brandon.
Is that you're 100% correct in the sense of smaller communities might not be able to have that on hand right away. Yes, it is a reduction of the assessed value of the share according to their assessed value, right? So it's even a smaller amount. And we think 20% is appropriate. And again, if we can throw out different numbers here, I guess I don't.
Yeah,
You have a pretty
not married to
good
that.
point. I'm actually, I don't know, I
Yeah.
hinge it on something else, but.
but I want to get them in.
Something.
That's the point, if you want to get them in.
So the payment terms, what was in the proposal for the, is it over 10
It
years?
was 100%, but it was over 10 years without interest.
So maybe 5 years.
I was going to say, because if we're talking about a 5-year vesting to start any sort of
Yeah,
earnout.
so they gotta pay.
Have that the period that they're
Yeah,
paying.
and they pay it, they're done, they get out.
And once they've paid
Stay.
in full, then
Yep,
they also
then
start
they're
accruing some equity,
Yep, yep.
which kind of makes sense.
So 5 to 5.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
20%, 5 years.
And payment terms would, 0% down, just like that amount spread evenly over a 5-year period of
Yep.
time.
Yep,
Simple.
and they got to stay the 5 years, or they pay the penalty.
Yeah, so if we start to then almost flip that to a discussion of what is a potential detachment valuation payout tiered schedule look like?
Apples and apples.
If you leave in 0 to 5 years,
Yeah,
$0 and you pay back what you paid to get in.
Right,
Right.
like what you didn't, you discounted.
Yeah, the difference.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about that. Is it payback that 80% you were discounted, or are we having them pay back the 20% they paid? Do you see what I'm saying? Is that-
I'm sorry, yeah. So what was the agreement? Is it a 20% discount, so 80% buy-in, or is it 20% buy-in?
20% buy-in.
Okay, got it,
20%
thank you. All
buy-in.
right, thank you.
And
then,
and initially, when I was conceptualizing this, I was thinking if you bought in at 80%, then your penalty to leave early would be
I see.
the 20% difference. But I think the flip side now is if you're buying in at a steep discount of 20%, your penalty could just align with your buy-in price, because that's, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
what they should have paid me.
No,
Their
no,
percentage?
because what they
I
should,
mean, I thought that's what Patrick's.
no, because what I'm saying
What they
is
should have paid was to pay their percentage of what we got here.
the
That's what you
20%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
we
so the-
discounted it to 20. We took their number and discounted it all the way down
Right,
to 20%. They owe that over 5 years. Once they get to 5 years, great, they're in for their percentage. They bought in and they've been paying every year their percentage. But it doesn't, they gotta pay every year, the percentage they have of the district. So then what Patrick's idea was that they don't make it to the 5 years.
Yeah.
The penalty can be steep, keeps them in the district.
Yeah, so what is that?
Yeah.
Minimum,
What they
it's,
should pay.
minimum, it's what remains unpaid
Yeah.
on whatever their 5-year balance is.
sure.
And then the question is it also up to what the 100%
Yeah, would have been.
calculus
Yeah,
would
I
have
think
been?
so.
I think so too.
I think so.
You're
So
wrong.
they come in cheap,
If they come in at 20 and quit right away,
less
they owe 80.
expensive.
And whatever's made in the 20.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they owe,
And forfeit assets.
Yeah.
So you're recouping the entire costs, what it would be owed, if they leave within 5 years, plus the new municipality would forfeit their, whatever they would have.
And then is that penalty then earned down over time, or is it not? Is the 80, is the?
No, they gotta stay the 5 years. They don't earn anything for staying.
I was gonna say the
Yeah,
best they would
it's
be.
flat out, you gotta stay 5 years, guys,
Okay, so during that 5 years, it's either,
all or nothing.
yeah, okay.
If you leave during that 5 years, you pay what you were obligated to pay, plus
Plus
the 80% of
80%.
what your original calculation was on that date. There'd be no new valuation
No, right, it's
metrics.
simple, right.
That number is set on buy-in.
Right.
And you're paying 20% and you're good,
But
but
they'll
if
know
you leave
the
early,
penalty. They'll
then
know the
it
penalty.
goes to 100% buy-in for
Penalty
that
will be
period.
right out in front.
Let's use some numbers, Sean. What was the buy-in amount without?
Well, I guess my question was, I'll answer your question and I'll ask my question. So, yeah, so 10%, 240,000 would have been buy-in, that we moved down to 48,000, so they only have that they pay over 5 years. My question is, okay, they pay 48,000 over 5 years, what happens if they leave in year 6?
Then we're out of the penalty
They're out of
phase.
the penalty phase.
And now we're into whether or not you are accruing any takeaway benefit.
Yeah, the detachment
Okay.
clause, which we gotta get to the,
Which is,
we gotta get to,
which has not been discussed.
has not been discussed.
Yeah, we gotta talk
Get-
about
get-
years 6 through
Here-
eternity.
Here's what I'm gonna say before we start using one to flip to the other. Apples and oranges, apples and pears. Let's not go there. Don't try to suggest the city of Ripon, the town of Ripon, town of DPS, sitting at this table, get put into this equation. We're trying to grow the district. That's the attachment world. Detachment, completely different question. If we can get there by negotiations, which is where I favor going, if we can't simply say 75, 18, 7. If we can't say that, then I'm willing, on behalf of the city, and I don't know that we do that tonight, but I'm willing to. And I guess that gets to you and me and them having an opportunity to talk, and the respective towns giving you authority. So the idea that you walk back out the door, and if they're saying, which is what I heard you say, they're not ready to say 75, 18.5. What's Navy Epson's?
Maybe 7.
Maybe 7. Whatever it is. If we're 75, we gotta come with 100 somewhere. So you know yours is 18,
18.7.
okay, all right, so
I thought, yeah, whatever.
6.3? 6.3?
I thought it was.
Yeah, I thought it was around 7 or some, but
Okay, whatever.
Whatever.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think that's the big nut for me, sitting at this table. It went back to clarification by you that the two issues are tied. We want to get this done as soon as possible. That's why we're here tonight, 1 week after the other meeting or whatever it was. We're here pretty quick. And I think in terms of bargaining this, we're not going to do it in open session at this table. We need to have authority, communicate, have them to guide us in terms of drafting it, so we can get it done quickly, but it's more about you and I, given the fact that you represent the other two players. So the out to me is completely different than the in. I think we did a good job of getting the in.
Is that a way of saying we're not gonna negotiate the out?
Not at this table in open session. That's why we go into closed session as municipalities, so that I have a parameter to be able to talk to my client. I'm not going to sit here tonight and say, unless we can agree on what it is, okay? What it is 75, 18.7 and whatever the remaining share is.
I agree with you, Bud, and I totally agree with both your perspectives, right? You need authority from.
Yeah, exactly, otherwise all we're doing is
I get it. But
spitballing in front of the
But the idea
camera.
here is it, are we willing, is there a willingness?
Well, that's
Right, to get
where
there.
he went out, and he
Right,
came
well,
back in.
But I heard him, right, I get that, but I want to make sure that,
Okay.
from a district's perspective,
Yeah.
is there even willing to have that discussion go forward? Because, again, I don't want to keep just butting heads, and then we're going to go back to the legislative bodies, we're going to come back here and say, no.
No, this
But
is
what do
going to
we-
be a
What's on
very
your
short
mind? I can tell
timeline.
you want to say
I
something.
got the hand thing. If what Lud's saying is that we're still just at you get out and you get your proportionate share,
That's not what I said.
that's, okay,
That's not what I said.
because that's not.
That's exactly opposite of what I said.
If it's some progression where over a period of time you stick around after this is done and you earn your way up to getting that, that's what we had talked about. And I just wasn't clear on whether you were
Are you talking attachment or detachment?
detachment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So,
tell you what, when you did it before, why don't you and I go over it
yeah, you want to do that?
and talk?
By the way, I thought, just to throw out there, for maybe this works on both ends, but what if there's cause to get out or something terrible happens?
Well, and that gets to kind of the statutory thing too, could fall into that vein.
Okay.
The legislature, yeah. All right. Okay. So I'm going to start redlining this thing.
Well, we've just some good progress already.
Yeah, I agree.
That's-
And I appreciate it.
Some good progress.
Appreciate it.
I mean, no one's signing anything, but consensus on a more reasonable timeframe than was presented, a consensus on a more reasonable attachment procedure than what we looked at. These are good steps.
However, I mean, we've got to take it back individually to the townships. and
Oh,
get
definitely.
approved.
Definitely.
You know, it's like, that's not that easy.
No.
I mean,
Yeah. I agree.
the people that participate in our meetings make their voices heard to us, to the elected people. And, you know, they worked long and hard, and Gary's not here tonight, so he can't give you the history, but they worked long and hard to put this together. I mean, it didn't happen in 5 months or whatever. I mean, it wasn't a quick thing, and it's not gonna be an easy sell because they're gonna have trouble understanding how there's any benefit to us in making a change. They're not gonna, and I mean, I think part of it is, I'm not gonna be able to sell them on, unless Lud gives us a complete story of how the mismanagement occurred. I mean, I'm not gonna make something up, and
I don't think that that's even relevant to this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone on behalf of the
I don't-
district even
no.
but
acknowledges
they're gonna
that.
have
and
to
I
be,
don't think
they're
it's
gonna have to
relevant.
be sold on the idea of approving this, because we're gonna vote according to our constituents.
Well, here's how I kind of see the process playing out. Here, we're trying to get a reasonable degree of consensus about concepts. And if we can leave this table tonight with that reasonable degree for us, on behalf of the district, to go kind of prepare proposed revised bylaws that we think align with what that consensus was, and then we share those with this committee first, right? So that the committee then has a chance to look at it and say, yeah, that's kind of what we talked about, or this feels good, or this feels bad.
You're talking about the Ripon Area Fire District?
No, I'm talking about this committee.
This committee, okay.
This committee's work is going to probably include at least one more meeting to review red line bylaws, and then maybe more. I mean, the committee's work is sort of until we figure it out, I think.
Unless there's an
The
impasse.
the other thing, just to give you feedback, the big hump to get over for our township is gonna be, I mean, we know that we set this money aside because it's in our budget annually, and we're buying a truck. Part of our township is covered by Berlin Fire District also. We're buying a truck in both districts this year, so it's a double whammy, but, and that's probably why our portion is smaller, because, it's only part of our,
And that's the sections we were talking
Yeah,
about.
the 21 and 36, right. That makes more sense. I'm glad to get the history of that. I was actually questioning these parts and not, okay, so Berlin has it. But what that goes, especially back with Tom's earliest comment here, is it's proportionate to the community
and-
itself.
Well, that's what, and Gary's exactly right when he made that comment. I mean, it's we're trying to have it be an equalized cost share of the expenses of the district, and you have to use some, but anyhow, the other hump we're gonna have to get over with these people is the idea that we, as a township, committed to buy this truck 3 years ago.
Right.
Coming up on 4 years ago, and, I mean, I'll admit, we've got some people that are gonna be a little bit hard-headed, so I don't know how we're gonna convince them that it's okay that they think the city made a commitment at the same time and the town of Ripon made a commitment. That's gonna be a little bit of a hump to get over to get it approved by our township.
And I would tell you from the district's perspective, I hear you. The funding for this fire truck should be separate and distinct from these bylaw revisions. Those are the motions that came out of this body. That's gonna go back to the municipalities. Your respective municipalities have to deliberate and vote on that. My hope, and we kind of talked about this at the last fire district meeting as to why we thought this was an effective path forward, is that you all, as representatives of your respective municipalities, can go back to your colleagues and communicate, we should approve the funding for the fire truck because we're obligated to buy it and it's the right thing for our people. And separately, I'm happy to report that we're having really reasonable, good faith discussions and making progress on bylaw revisions that are going to benefit all of our respective communities. And that the funding can be approved and that we keep working in earnest on these bylaws. That's what should happen.
And I would agree with that, that's what should happen. I mean, we're willing to work on, you know, updating or upgrading the bylaws to get other participation in. It's just that I mean, they're not gonna like the fact that right now, the way that's being done, the way Leslie's explaining it, it is tied together.
And so I
It
think
should be
all
separate.
that's coming back to your municipality is, right now, you've been notified that the district has approved a second amended bylaw amendment, and your body's got to react on that. The benefit, if there is one, is that you're actually going back to your respective communities and asking for a lower expenditure than was anticipated. And so all you need to do as a town is you authorized the expenditure previously. And so you just would reauthorize a slightly lower expenditure.
It's like advantageous.
Same thing from your perspective.
We already have.
Right,
Oh,
okay. So,
Did they amend it?
Yes.
and from the city's perspective, it's the same process that's got to happen. And hopefully, the funding can be approved. The city's already acknowledged the funding's available. That was done last time. It's just whether we can now release the funds without having the bylaw project hang over the head of that.
How are you feeling about that? What do you don't have any sense of to whether it needs to be tied together from the city
You're
council?
saying for me?
From the city council standpoint.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting for me. Like, I'll be honest, like, I don't know if you guys have the same thing, but like, I go into our city council meetings when we have something that's contested. And maybe it's because I went to school for politics, right? And like, I try to picture how people are actually gonna vote. And I legitimately have no idea on this one. I didn't last time and I don't this time. Yeah, and there's been other ones that I've gone in and I've predicted like vaguely accurate, but like if I go around, you know, and I just work my way around to who's there, I really don't know.
Was it presented, was it always presented only to be coupled together with a bylaw change?
No.
I think that was presented through the most recent staff report provided right before the last city council meeting. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'd have to go back. I can't remember.
It certainly wasn't presented to us as council for the district that these were officially coupled any time in advance of the staff report previously. There have been discussions about bylaws, as we all know, and that's taken place, but that was not the case.
Thank you.
I'd say just dynamically, it's, the city council is an interesting point, right? Because we're coming up to elections,
Yeah.
and there are contested elections, and the mayor's a contested,
Yeah.
right? So there's, you know, the politicking that's going into all of it too, so it's interesting.
Go ahead, sorry.
No. I guess I was just gonna say that there's a fair amount of good consensus achieved here tonight, and I would try and, maybe it's naive on my part, but I am just viewing the two things as independent action items, because they are. And if a municipality acts differently, we have no choice but to deal with that. But in the meantime, this body, this committee, and then the fire district as a body, has to just take its independent action.
This was very helpful to us to understand the consequences of actions.
And I think as you talked about last week, it's an eyes forward game,
Yeah.
because it has to be.
Keep in mind, if you interviewed the 3 elected officials in my township, you're not gonna find any sales skills in any of those 3 people.
Why not your town?
Just saying.
So you're the sales guy.
You, what's the other one? You, Biden,
And Jim Schilder, he's a welder in Oshkosh Truck. He's a good representative
But you know, when
of some of the
this
farm.
fire truck was originally voted on by the fire district, we took that back to our 2 towns and approved that. You know, my understanding is the city didn't get it taken back to them.
yeah, and I think that's accurate. I think, you know, as the only city council person here for Ripon, you know, was maybe a lack of knowledge, at least on my end, for sure, of like what that next step was supposed to be. I didn't know. And it was actually something as Adam, when this all started coming up like 6 months ago, my first question was like, were we supposed to? Like, I just don't know, right? It's like one of those things, there's not a manual that says, you know, at the fire
That's fair.
district,
Well,
right?
And that's fair, and you're right, Barry, John did the same thing, but it kind of almost, I don't hate to use the word, it is what it is kind of thing, but I mean, the point is trying to rectify that and see what we can do moving forward in order to get that purchase completed.
Yeah, we can't dissolve the fire district. All 3 entities need fire protection.
Yeah,
You know, so we have to somehow figure out how to go forward.
And I think to that point that you just made, we haven't gotten there tonight, because I think that's when we talk about other potential bylaw updates. There's reasonable things to think about. For instance, it's clear that the district has the purchasing authority, but it's got to get its funding, right, from municipalities. It would be reasonable, in my estimation, to have some language in the bylaws that says when a purchase is made, you know, if that would trigger the budgetary municipal approval clause, then notice shall be given to the municipalities about the purchase to be approved. Right, I mean, like, there's a better way to say that, but you see what I'm saying? There's
And let's
probably.
actually draft.
And I ignored you.
So,
No,
like,
I went to
propose
Brandon,
that
Brandon.
to try to
Yeah, you know.
help them out.
That was a little more down.
Yeah, it took a lot.
Just logically.
Think this isn't, but
No, that was a
lot of
You
reading.
brought that up, that before an $800,000 purchase was made, that you should have went to the city, feels logically correct to me, right? Because if that is the funding body, like before we have an authority to do something, we should be able to, you know, whether that's.
Before being alerted at the budget.
Yeah, putting a 3 to 5 year capital plan in front of the city to say, this is what we want to do, you know, do you stamp this?
That's a really good point. You know, I mean, is capital plan appropriate?
Ken, I think that was one comment. Did you join in this conversation?
We're just kind of starting.
Operating budget versus capital budget.
Yeah.
Calling that out in the bylaws makes sense. Because this whole issue of buying the truck should have been set out in a capital.
All right, so bring us up to speed, guys.
Okay, here's the concept, is we're gonna talk.
You just
And we
talked.
have some, we did, but I think we have to kind of exchange concepts, negotiating to move forward on detachment. And then we would reconvene this body. You guys can start on bylaws on the attachment end of it. And maybe the capital, do we all agree on separating out capital and operating?
I don't want to be too complex in the bylaw amendments itself, just, I know you guys kind of have a battle to climb a little bit, so.
But on that issue? Well, no, detachment, we're going to then communicate with you guys,
Right.
okay? We're going to talk, we're going to exchange ideas, and then we're going to talk to you guys before the next meeting, and we may have a meeting of the minds to move forward on the detachment language.
Yeah, for the sake of this, and for the sake of them going to there, I would just keep it at an attachment, detachment, not do anything with.
With anything else, okay, and that's fine with me.
Yeah.
If that's okay with, I
Just
don't know
to
which
not
one.
muddy the water. I mean, you guys can
Conquer.
informally, by all means, like, do something, you know, if Ellen.
Yeah, there are
it's
things you
okay,
see.
But,
Yeah, I think, let me put it this way, and you tell me what you think. There's other concepts in the bylaws that if we're going in with a red pen, we ought to deal with some stuff, right? And that makes sense. And I think that
That's kind of what I'm saying.
what you described falls under that scenario
Yeah.
where I don't think we have any per se objection to refining those concepts. We can work on that. What I think, the stalemate that I think exists and that we have to acknowledge and that we were just talking about while you guys were out is there's likely going to be heavy resistance from the townships and their constituents to approving the budget and moving these things forward if it feels like it's an ultimatum connected to bylaw revisions being finalized and approved. And that's fair.
That's what we discussed.
And that's fair.
We're not looking for
And
that.
if we can have, and that's what you were just talking about, right? And if we can achieve some recognition that we need to approve the funding, and at the same time, we have arrived at some consensus. It's not finalized, it's not signed, but there's some consensus here tonight already, and hopefully some to come from what you guys are talking about. And that's going to continue to be worked on, and hopefully these two things work in concert, but they are not ultimatums tied to each other. That would be in the best interest of the fire district.
Okay.
And frankly, I think
Let me
municipalities.
get out my eraser board. We're going to get this resolved so we can move forward with buying the truck. That's our goal, because every day we're losing money. And so we want to get it resolved. April is when we take delivery, right? So it's going to be February shortly. We want to get that resolved, and that's what Matt and I will be getting done so that it can be approved. And if it's just detachment and attachment, and then we come back with other stuff later, this board can stay, or this ad hoc committee can stay in place to wrestle other issues in the bylaws. But we're going to have those two amendments. Attachment and detachment will be passed by the bodies so that we can authorize the expenditure of the fire truck.
When's that, just so I can mark my calendar, when's the city council meeting where that would take place? Do we know that?
Their next one is the
Just
second Tuesday of
It'll
the
be
month.
second Tuesday. but-
Yeah, so you and I,
So we gotta get it figured out
we gotta
before
get
then.
hustling. We
That
can
way
get
we
hustling,
can
and
have
right. If we get the attachment and detachment language, that's, the attachment language you're gonna write.
That's fine. Well,
Detachment, we're gonna have an agreement.
Yeah, and I think there's not a disagreement of what you're going to be working on, I guess, but kind of going with what Tom was saying about the selling the point back to both the towns.
He's their attorney.
Right.
Understood, but he doesn't make the decisions.
Right.
No, he makes recommendations.
But the
Correct.
point is not to hinge it on an item, right? So what's going to be most appropriate for the district is what I want to make sure that the discussions are being focused on, right? Rather than, well, do you want the fire truck or not? How are we going to get there?
No.
Yeah,
That's not what we're talking
Well,
about.
is this going to come back to this committee first?
Yes.
So it's going to come back, you're going to work on something, it's going to come back to this committee, then it's going to go.
Yeah, we're not trying to cut anybody
Then it's going to
off.
go to the
We can go in the
fire,
back room and say.
then it's going to go to the fire district as a whole, and then it'll come back to the individual three municipalities.
Yes,
Correct?
so we gotta line up the dots.
Those are the
And
meetings.
what I'm expecting is we're gonna get from you guys, the fire district is gonna get an overview prior to that meeting of the fire district.
Absolutely, we would have agreed conceptually,
Okay.
and we would have drafted the language for the proposed attachment and
Okay.
detachment provisions. That would be done by Fire District Council. We would advise you about it and we would talk about
You
it.
saw this, right?
Is that the memo? I don't have any glasses. You're looking at me, Tom?
It's,
Oh, yeah, I've seen
That's the one
that.
that Tom said.
That's our analysis to the Fire District Board about the,
I do have
Yep.
that.
I mean, because that's very helpful. I mean, if the people that voted the township, if we look at something like this,
Oh, definitely.
even
Yep.
after it's passed here.
Yep, you'll literally see like strike through red line language with an analysis attached to it,
Okay.
yeah.
I wasn't cutting, we're not cutting anybody off. We're not cutting this committee off.
No,
We're just not going to negotiate in open session.
oh, understood, yeah, we're not suggesting
We're
otherwise.
going to do our work,
Tom,
and
is
we're
your-
going to give recommendations to our clients.
So that I'm on the same page as you, are you talking about, do they have to go back and do a budget, approve a new budget? Is
No,
that-
no, no.
Or have they approved their budgets?
Budget
It's
is-
just-
budget's
it's just the
approved.
city.
By the Fire District. Budget's approved, that's got to go to the municipalities, they have to act on it.
Yep, so they have not acted on the.
They have.
We have.
We have not.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to sort out here.
And-
So you need to be able to explain it to,
Yeah, well,
that's where you're coming
we
from.
can do that amended budget. That's
Okay.
not a problem. But
That's-
we
that's
decided
done from-
because everything's up in the air, we've already had one special meeting. We're trying to be as efficient as we can. So we didn't have that meeting, but we could have it
Okay.
easily.
Okay,
But the biggest thing, as I mentioned when you guys were out, is that, we have to sell this to the constituency so that when we vote on this, the bylaw changes, that we can get it to go through. I mean, it's not that easy. None of the guys on our
Yeah.
board are salespeople.
so order of operations then would ideally be, we get things sorted out, city council says we like it, we're gonna approve the budget.
So I would just, and I don't mean to cut you off.
It's not going to be cut.
The order of operations would be, you guys talk about concepts and come to some sort of consensus. That comes to us and the Fire District Board first, before anything goes to any municipalities, needs to agree on a consensus about the change to their bylaws. And then it would go to the municipalities.
How it's written right now currently.
Yeah.
They approve, send back for approval.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to sort out is, you guys were talking about the goal of getting the fire truck
Yeah.
thing resolved,
Yeah.
but if it's not resolved until all of that happens, that's gonna be.
Well, that's the point. That's why we got to keep moving. So I don't want roadblocks to
If
getting this done.
absolutely need be, I think the district has been pretty receptive on doing a special meeting
Okay.
too.
I mean, that's important. And I get
Why don't we
your role.
pinpoint
I'm
this?
trying to get-
Tom and I obviously have notes in the takeaway directive from the ad hoc committee about attachment and maybe some other areas we could button up and just maybe send for revisions and review. For your both perspectives, right, coming from the town and the city's perspective, just you two, detachment focus.
Correct.
Don't worry about attachment or anything else, capital operating stuff, just.
Yep, correct,
I mean, and that's really what's gonna come back to.
correct, correct.
And
That's correct. Then
we've got the first step of the detachment ladder already defined with the
Right.
0 to 5 years. That's good.
And budget year plus 24 months,
That's good too.
so, yeah.
That's some real progress.
Okay, so then our next fire district meeting is next Tuesday. First Tuesday of the month.
The regularly
The regular-
scheduled.
the regular
Right,
Tuesday.
you're going to have a special meeting.
But, I mean,
So I don't think Matt and I'll have this ironed out
No.
before,
Yeah, no.
before next week.
Yeah, I mean, this wouldn't be on the agenda.
okay, no, I guess my question was, would either one of you or you guys need to be at that next meeting? But if there's nothing to discuss, then it shouldn't even be on the agenda.
Unless Ellen has something new for you, I don't think we need to be there.
Right, I'm sure it's just, status quo matters.
I mean, I know you guys like hanging out here, but like,
Yeah, you're the chief support? You're going forward with that.
No, it really hinges on getting the details of the detachment concept. And once the other pieces, I think there's really good consensus on, and once you layer that in, then we've got something to take to all the bodies and actually chew on and approve.
yeah.
Does that seem fair?
I think that's where we are.
So we can reset a meeting here, 2 weeks maybe. It would be a goal between Matt and I. That we get something to you prior to that so you can piece it out and then this ad hoc, unless you want to just skip the ad hoc. I don't.
Well, I mean, it was a directive from the district to do so, so the district itself would have to, yeah, just say revisions back to it. So that's why I fear, us just saying, oh, we don't need to meet anymore.
No, I'm saying, I'm fine with it. I'm just pushing it back on you to decide whether you want to.
Yeah, I think, as, when you guys were out, I said that at a minimum, this body probably needs to convene one more time to go
Okay.
over what
Okay,
the
right.
consensus is before we go to the respective bodies.
Sounds good.
If we want to set a date now, or if we want to do it by
Well, I would,
email tomorrow?
I think we could do it by email. Like, I'm fine with that. That would make the most
Okay.
sense. But I would say 2 weeks is the target, somewhere in that 2
I
weeks.
think I probably have an AMRO meeting, but fine, I'll maybe see if there's issues on there, if we're looking at the same.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's Wednesday, yeah, never mind.
Well, it doesn't need to be Wednesday.
Oh, Wednesday probably works for me, because I know Tuesdays are tied
I
up.
think I had something that needed it to be today instead of tomorrow.
Well, like last time, if it worked for everyone, I'll have my assistant
Okay,
reach out
beautiful.
with some
She did a good
proposed
job.
dates, give a couple options, people reply as quickly as they can, and let's lock it in. And if it's 8 days from now, or if it's 15 days from now, whatever we need to do, but let's get it locked in.
Okay,
That way it's on the
sounds
calendar.
good. Sounds good.
Fair?
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion, meetings are adjourned at 7:46.